Bring it up. Oh, I'm hot. I forgot.
8:30.
And y'all said, Mike said. Like to call this meeting to order with the roll call, please. Ms. Parker.
Sharon Gordon.
Present.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Present.
George Machado.
Here.
Virginia Houston.
Present.
Pam Fresa.
Here.
Rodney Walton.
Here.
Daniel Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Houston, the ethics awareness statement, please.
Welcome to the May 16th, 2022 meeting of the Elizabeth City Passport Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of the board that it is your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is your duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage your personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflicts or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board today? Let the records reflect that no conflicts exist.
Thank you. I need a motion from the floor to approve today's agenda.
Madam Chair, did somebody do it already?
No, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve today's agenda.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor? Roll call vote.
Dr. Williams.
Yes.
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 Pam Fresa.
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, we're going to move on with the Financial Business and Technology Committee with the maintenance report as information. And Ms. Wilkins is here. Does anyone have any questions or any concerns? Ms. Wilkins, I have a question. Where are we on the parking lot projects? Can we get an update on that?
We just had the county approve. We were waiting for that transaction. I'll get it.
Okay,
As far as where they're at now.
all right,
We'll have-
okay. So you have no idea, you can't pinpoint,
Cannot.
okay, all right, okay. Are there any other concerns or questions from the floor?
I did want to make a statement about the paving here. I think that's an excellent job out here. And I think they've done good.
I had a question. I'm sorry, I just thought of something. Didn't we mention that we have a grant for some repairs to scoreboards and things like that concerning athletics? Okay. I was just curious because we received something at the school as parents about fundraising, and one of the fundraising goals was helping repair the scoreboards. So I didn't know if the schools had been notified about the grants and what we would be using it for. Okay. Well, it is for a team, and it didn't say specifically, but that's what the kids said, that one of the things they wanted to try to do is fix that. So if they could be notified. Okay.
Going back to the parking lot projects, just one more question. We have Northeastern, Sheep, and Central Elementary. Do you know what order?
No, ma'am.
You happen to know?
I was
Okay.
not, no, ma'am.
All right. Okay. Anything else from the floor? Thank you, Ms. Wilkins.
Thank you.
All right, and now we're going to have Ms. Haynes.
Board, Vice Chair Williams, and board members, good evening. The first item on the agenda for finance this evening is FBT 02 budget amendments, number 107204, 307R, 308806. Amendment 107 is for the State Public School Fund and shows an overall increase of $299,045. The majority of the increase is for the initial allotment for PRC 016 summer reading camp, the conversion of 001 positions to 020 for IFE teachers, and an additional allotment of PRC 30 for state textbooks. Amendment number 204 shows a net increase of 0 and aligns budget to act. The next amendment, number 307R, is a correction to last month's amendment. The change is in the beginning and ending budget numbers, top part of it. Everything else remains the same. So the actual increase, what it was for, is correct, but the beginning and ending. Amendment number 308 shows an overall increase of $169,649. Majority of the increase is for 3 new allotments, PRC 186, 191, and 195. Those are additional. And the last amendment is amendment number 806, which shows an overall increase of $472,763. And this is for the NCDHHS K-12 COVID testing program. Are there any questions?
So these new ESSER funds that you talked about, 186, 191, that's new money that just, 90, yeah. And those are new money that just came in?
Yes.
And the date to use those is this 2024?
Are there any other questions from Ms. Haynes on the budget amendments? Okay, let's move on to the purchasing report, Ms. Haynes.
Yes, ma'am. The next item, FBT 03, is monthly purchasing report. Are there any questions?
Any questions about these items?
If there are no questions, we would request the budget to be listed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Haynes. We're going to do a motion after the CTE plan is presented. We'll wrap it up all in one. Okay, I'm going to move on to Dr. Ingram, and Mr. Miller is here to present some information that I think will be very good for us in our plans going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Warden. I'd like to introduce Mr. Michael Miller to you from, he's previously from out of Raleigh, and he worked with ORED. They were housed at NC State. He's actually done some work here in Elizabeth City before. He's currently in Charleston, but he still works with Wake County schools and also a large district down in South Carolina. And he analyzes student enrollment and projections and facilities and facility use. And I think the document that you have before you is extremely valuable in terms of long-range planning. And that's something that the commissioners brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago when I was before them. So I believe you'll find this report to be very helpful in decisions. But this is for information only. I want to emphasize that. Information only. So Mike, take it away. Thanks for being here.
Madam Chair, Mr. Reeves, here, good evening. As Eddie mentioned, I have worked with school districts for almost 20 years, 19 years. I love it. It's always great to be in boards and get right into the job that you have. You can go to slide 2. That's not a very long presentation this evening. This presentation mirrors the written report that is in the package. So that's one of the items that it shows. Another item is a table from a spreadsheet of 10-year forecast. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. Basically, there are 3 topics for this presentation. We're looking at some background data and trends, including the general population. Go directly to the forecast. All the work that I do in school planning really is based on doing as best we can, a membership forecast for, as I mentioned, 5 to 10 years long-term planning. School locations, we need to know where the school kids are going to be, so we can put a school in the proper place. Attendance boundary adjustments, things like that, are all based off the forecast. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the forecast. And finally, the crux of the presentation is the beginnings of a discussion for your information about student assignment. I have been tasked with looking at a number of different scenarios, district-wide, that we discussed. And I hope this is, I don't know what the protocol is, I hope this is informal enough that you can ask questions as they come up, or follow up, happy to try to answer them if I can. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, next slide. As I said, let's talk a little bit about the background data, general population trends here. I don't know if you've seen this data before. This is or something like this before. This is from the Office of State Budget and Management. So they're the people that produce county level forecasts for the state. And with the exception of Currituck County, all the counties in this region, this is general population, not school one. All the counties of this region have either been flat for the last 10 years or slightly declining, with the exception of Currituck. And the OSPM also does projections, and the final column there, the final picture, is in 2030. And the trends basically are expected to continue. Currituck growing, and the rest of the county remains, or slightly decreasing. One of the very interesting phenomena in population studies that I am seeing working in school districts is decreased fertility. It's a nationwide phenomenon, and what that means is, as we progress year after year, we're seeing fewer and fewer, relatively speaking, school-age children. And some districts are getting very hard by this, but it is a widespread phenomenon. And in the case of Hasseltang County, median age is expected to increase from about 36 in 2000 to over 38 in 2030. That's just a 2-year jump, but that is a significant jump in age of residents in the county. And once again, that's something else. Another thing that you probably already know is these coastal Carolinas are becoming a place where retirees want to come. So if they don't bring school-age children, and that's a phenomenon we're seeing. People days. That's the tail of the general population. Next slide, please. When we zoom into the district itself, this table shows the membership, the average daily membership from 1 to 2. That's typically what we use in North Carolina for projections, from 2016 through 2021. So over that period, over that 6-year period, we're looking at a decrease of about 210 students, or about 4% per year. Clearly, 2020 was an outlier. I think calculated a 1-year decrease of about 9% in 2020, which is, as you know, we saw across the state, across the nation. But that doesn't The future trends that we're going to see don't exactly continue this trending so drastically. There's enough evidence, enough momentum in the school report to improve kind of level it's off. See the forecast to that. Okay, next slide, please. Forecast is built off what I call a cohort feeder model. What that does is it concentrates on individual schools and how the grades inside an individual school will advance and then go to that next feeder. Works well for smaller districts that have fairly clean feeder patterns like your district. And it's pretty good at really zooming in on individual areas of growth. The assumptions behind the forecast you're about to see are it's based on month 2, as I said. We also look at the county resident live births. But even though the live birth data from history up to 2020 is flat, maybe a little decreasing, forecast you're going to see has a very conservative growth at about 1% per year over the next several years. DPI, which where I get my data, does not include pre-K. However, the district is kind enough to supply me with pre-K membership each year. That's inside the formula too. And you may have heard this, but we had a Zoom meeting, I think in March, where Dr. Ingram and other members spoke with county and municipal planners, try to get a sense of is there new growth coming? What's the dynamics of the population of the county? Where do we expect to see new developments? Very helpful. They both parties, the county and the city, shared data with me that inform the forecast as well. So that was very helpful. And next time you see them, please thank them. And Dr. Ingram mentioned the forecast is really, it's not like a snapshot of what's going to happen next year. That's great if it works that way. It's not designed to do that. There are better ways of doing that. It's a planning forecast. It's intended for anywhere from 3 to 5 or 10 years. Things like facilities, work renovations, consolidations, assignment changes, things like that. So let's keep that in mind as we look at the forecast. Okay, next slide. And of course, you can't see all the numbers there. That's why you have one in front of you. I'll run through this, but spend your own time and kind of be used to the document. This is kind of a fairly central document when a district is looking at future planning. First thing I'll mention is that this includes history from 2016 through 2021. That's actual data from DPI. And then on the right side of the forecast is the projection over the next 10 years, that cohort feeder model. And the colors that you see represent how crowded the school is. So using the capacity, the building sizes that I get from the district. So as you can see, there's a lot of green. Green means it's under 90% utilized. So there's at least 10% of the seats available. And some of these schools have more space than that, for sure. But that's the basic idea. You'll also see that we have 128 pre-K kids. I think they're at Sheep Party this year. So we kept that constant throughout the forecast. It's difficult to predict pre-K, so generally we'll keep it constant. That seems to be a really good rule. So if you have any questions about this, I don't know if you've had any chance to study this before tonight, but if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. But hopefully, as you get into it, the assumptions are at the top. So, see what went into the model. Okay, next slide. A couple of takeaways from the portfolio. Saw a lot of green on that table. The average utilization this year for K-5 schools was about 67% based on the building capacities that we received from the district. For middle schools, 67%, and for high schools, 47%. So that tells you about how full the schools are as they exist today. Most schools are expected to be well below 90% utilization for the next several years. If you look at the forecast itself, forecasts always change. Hurricane country, you see things change over 24 hours. Right? So there's certainly a possibility that forecasts can change, but they're expected to be well below 90% for the next several years. And today, or at least this year, there's about 3,000 available K-12 seats in district. Your question. Next slide, please. So at this point, we'll pivot into the final piece of this presentation where we talk about student assignment. Numerics was tasked with exploring student assignment scenarios that consolidate existing school populations across the district. These are not recommendations, these things. This is hopefully the start of a discussion. I want to give you the best that the data and the best models can give you. Start talking about this if the board chooses to do so. So in these scenarios, the following assumptions are common. The building capacities were supplied by the district, as I said, as of this year. The membership continues a flat or slightly increasing forecast in some areas in the north over the next 10 years. And pre-K students are not used in the scenario data itself, just the K-12. Okay, next slide, please. And I'll make one of my main talking points here. If the discussion of student assignment consolidation continues, it's central to that discussion, and I've been through this with several districts, central to that discussion needs to be a deep, thorough discussion about school issues. I've sat in front of boards and talked about utilization a lot. That's not something that generally boards feel it's defensible enough when they have to go back to consolidate operations. What is effective is looking at the safety aspects of older schools, the increased efficiencies that you get with a lot of the newer models that are coming out from school design these days. So there's other very large pieces that are more central to the discussion of school consolidation than mine, just my pre-K. These scenarios are presented as explorations of the feasibility of school consolidation. Again, they're not. Next slide, please. I mentioned a couple slides ago that you have about 3,000 surplus seats, K-12 throughout the district. This is a kind of 30,000 foot level of how that breaks down for this year's membership among elementary K-5s and 6-8 and high schools. About 1,100 of those surplus seats are in elementary schools, K-5, about 500 in middle, and about 1,400 in the high school. Next slide. So at this point, we'll take a look at the first scenario. I'm going to present two this evening, and they're all dealing with K-5. This one looks at replacing all 7 K-5 schools with 4 K-5, new K-5 schools having a capacity of 600 each. And I'll make a remark about that 600. For modeling purposes, it's very important to kind of use a number that makes sense. It's a reasonable number for a school, for a K-5 school. But I would consider these what I call open opening capacity. Meaning that a lot of the modern models of school construction these days have the option of expanding. So you'll build a school that opens with a capacity of 600, but the cafeteria, media rooms, and parking structures and all things like that are capable of expanding to larger than 600. And there's some land at the end of one of the wings to tack on some more classrooms. That's a very common design in modern schools. So these have an opening capacity of 600 students each. And when you let the numbers do what they do, what we end up with is at the last to the rightmost column here is estimated utilization. So 4 schools replacing the 7 elementary schools currently existing, you're looking at 96, 79, 96, and 96%. They're full. So this means that you probably wouldn't use a scenario like this to actually practically plan these schools with capacity of 600. You need some room in case growth, in case cohorts get large. We all know that kids don't come in little, one by one. Some classes large, some classes small, and the membership fluctuates. Next slide, please. So the computer tells us that the 4 K-5 schools, capacity 600 again, are located where you see those big circles. And the encouraging thing about this scenario to me is that 3 of the target areas, 3 of these big circles, are very close to existing sites. That means that it may be possible to take an existing site, do a renovation, bring it up to modern specs. If it needs to be a little bit larger, a little bit smaller, then we do that work too. But that's encouraging. It means you're not looking for new land. You already have the land. And in some cases, in some districts I work with, they will completely build a new school where the old school was. Those sites are north side, kind of halfway between Sheep Harney and Moore and Center, actually. So as I mentioned, replacing all 7 existing schools with 4 capacity 600 schools eliminates almost all of the excess capacity. They're pretty tight. And if new industry comes into the county or into the region and families start showing up with kids, there's going to be need to be expanded. This would be a bare kind of minimum type of scenario for the county. Any questions on the diagram? These are also reprinted in some more detail and better detail. Okay, next slide, please. There's a trend in some of the growing districts that I work with in building margins. You get more efficiencies. All kinds of things can make it more efficient to operate. So we did another scenario with 2 new K-5 schools. This time, the capacity of K-5 schools is 750, getting on the large side for an elementary school. But this scenario does not replace Weeksville and Northside. Partly due to their geography, where they are. Okay, they're situated in areas in the county where they take care of a lot of the geography of the county. And you'll see that the school locations end up being right. So how this works out is North side comes out with a estimated utilization of about 95%. Weeksville is 81%, and the 2 new schools are neck and neck at 97% with a capacity of 750. So once again, this is kind of a minimal scenario. There's not a lot of room to grow should industry come in and jobs and families with school-age children. Next slide, please. So here's the, where the computer thinks these, new schools could go, right at Elizabeth City. Can't recall what these are. I think one of them is right here, son.
The bottom one.
I
B.
didn't write that down. Anyways, that takes care of the middle part of the county. When you get into situations like this, and with no changes in the middle school, this is going to mean a split feeder pattern. You know what I mean by a split feeder pattern. So K-5 school, all the children from a K-5 school may have to go to 2 different middle schools. That already occurs in the county, but this almost assuredly would have that without some major. Okay, before we transition into the final segment, I'd like to kind of underline some stuff here. What I think are the takeaways here. The data and forecast models suggest that new school scenarios are feasible. Yes, you can do it. Not only that, a lot of the locations that are what we call optimal they already have a school there. That's a good sign. Well placed to serve the needs of the county. These new school scenarios are feasible and will likely result in increased operational efficiencies. Again, these scenarios are not recommendations. They're meant as start looking at some options if the board could consider consolidation part of the long-term solution for the district. The location of several of the new school target areas suggests that current facilities are well positioned for renovation and expansion. That's a key point in this report, from my perspective. The condition of existing facilities must be a primary driver for any discussion of consolidation. That's something I said at the top. So that's the most successful consolidation projects that I have been involved are driven by schools, not necessarily. Before we go to the next and final section, any questions? And can I clarify my ability?
When you're looking at the, looking at your baseline analysis and you're looking at the surplus seats, are we looking at just the building utilization or are we looking at the modulars or trailers also?
Just the building.
Part.
Because we're still using some of our modules now, right? We're still using some of our trailers now, right?
Mhm.
So this is saying we're using our trailers when we really don't need to. That's what,
It depends. Oh, sorry. I found that in my experiences, when you have more programs, you have to sometimes you have enough physical seats, but programs sometimes beget different spaces. So that, for instance, when Northeastern was built in 1969, I clearly remember my brother was of the first graduating class. They had 5 trailers the first year. The first year. It wasn't built large enough the very first year. So in other places I've worked, we found that we could eliminate some mobile units because mobile units or trailers or whatever, or pods or whatever we call them, were always meant to be temporary. But I found it humorous that temporary trailers last for 30, 40, and even 50 years. So Mike is, like he said, he answered your question, I think, was this does not include the trailers. This is just the capacity of the buildings themselves, including the additions. And what's not on the PowerPoint, I would invite you to look at the ages of the facilities. Because at some point that has to be addressed. For instance, you're looking at a 64-year-old man that at 10 years old went to school in the old Sheet Elementary School. And when I went through that old building, it didn't look a lot different than my recollections 55 years ago. And if if board, whatever, this board or a future board or future superintendents, 20 years from now, don't address it somehow, then we're going to have, instead of an 81-year-old building, a 106-year-old building. And you don't do it just for money-saving purposes. You really want to look at educational purposes of it. And because of the emphasis on collaboration and working together, you tend to have more open spaces now in industry as well as in more modern schools. So you just have to look at it holistically. But in my opinion, and I'll stop here, it provides the board and future boards a valuable planning tool from which to begin. But nothing's in stone. It's just something that you've got your hands around, and you're not just making that, oh, let's put a school over here because Uncle John has a piece of land and he'll sell it to you for next to nothing. And then you've got a school in a place where you don't really need it because you haven't taken a scientific look at where the populations and trends are going to go. It is an educated guess, but it's a good one. So I stop.
And in the appendix here, there's a list of the age of facilities. PowerPoint is also in your.
Sir, what I don't understand is, I agree on the age of building. In my opinion, we got some buildings, they're too old, but that's my personal opinion. But the thing I don't understand on growth is way in the beginning, you were saying it's going to go from 31 to 36 as far as the age people come, and more retirees you were projecting, which weren't going to bring kids. So I'm like, where are you getting these numbers? You know,
There is some evidence in the cohorts that are in the populations today that indicate that there will be, I wouldn't call it aggressive growth or even moderate. Call it, if it happens, it's conservative. And so my baseline was, let's look at what we have today. The scenarios that you're seeing are generated, assuming it's not going to change very much from what it is today. It possibly could decrease a little bit. It possibly could increase. My increase was at the end of the forecast, so they're always a little bit fuzzy. Yeah, it's a struggle.
Ms. Miller, I got a two-part question for you. With regard to Northside and Weeksville, would those two school districts be broadened as you try to shrink the four schools centrally? Or would those two school districts still serve the same communities?
I think they would be enlarged. I don't think they would shrink. I did not do any attendance boundaries by design. Very early process. But, and the reason I'm saying that is currently they're not up to their efficiency. So if the districts as they are today, Weeksville, Northside, driving the kind of student that's very last year.
And if you look at the county growth numbers, it looks as if the north side of town is going to grow much faster than other areas within our community. Also, the Weeksville area, you have to take into consideration, you've got the Coast Guard base. And, you know, they've got families coming in and out. So that's another thing to consider.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, the clarification from the county city planners was that growth as it occurs is going to be a primary in the forecast.
One last thing I would like to add, if the board had, in later discussions, had some other ideas, Mr. Miller would be glad to run those scenarios and what it would look like in terms of district lines and things of that nature. And it would again give you a more scientific approach to addressing aging facilities.
Okay, I'll wrap it up with one last topic. Next slide, please. And speaking of that, quick glance at the feeder patterns as they exist today. Sawyer, for example, is based on data from actual students where they reside. So Sawyer doesn't have much of a feeder issue at all. And Sheep Marty is not very large, but the other two schools have a significant number of children that go different. Can you fix those? Yes, that's a fairly simple process. At least for me, I'm reading. Yeah, in the case of this, and in situation where you do have a lot of excess capacity, there is not a driver from utilization to fix the feeder patterns. Always have to balance community input with what you're doing, what you're trying to do. And even though some of these are split pretty heavily, it would be, there'd have to be a justification. Cleaning up this feeder. But it is certainly doable. There's a lot of space to do it. You can either move middle school line, K-5 line, or both. And in cases where I've looked at situations like this, transportation becomes a huge driver from the science part. Where are bus routes best suited, be efficient, pick up all the kids they need to go, minimize the first school drop off back, things like that. So that's a deeper, much deeper thing that we want to get into. That's how that. The next slide, please.
And that's in our report too, isn't it?
It's in your
It's
report.
the feeder. Uh-huh.
That's the end of my presentation. There are some, the appendix. You'll want to see some where the data came from, their chart of facilities, and a little bit about my work over the last, almost.
So, Mr. Miller, let me ask you this question, on a lighter note. Typically, how are these presentations received by your other boards that you visited?
They're received, I hope. They're received, in largely the way that they're designed and explorations. These aren't, as I mentioned, these aren't set in stone. These aren't, it's a unique business. You're not in that place. It's meant to start a fire. You got a lot of schools, a lot of.
Are there any other questions?
What are the next steps for boards in this phase? So we're looking at this information, and so now what's the next step?
Great question, and I feel the next thing would be to take a serious look at either an architectural firm or a school design firm of some sort that really drills down to the condition of existing facilities. Are there places in existing schools that could be expanded? And you saw some of the areas that are targeted. Are there some schools that are, it would cost more to bring them up to bottom spec than it would be worth it? Those are the big questions. I'm way optimistic. That's typically the next step. Start looking at consultants or possibly internally. I don't know if it's possible, but to really drill down and see what the condition, what's the safety aspects, what are the educational environments of each school.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller,
Thank
for
you
your
very
work. I think you've given us a good foundation to start some very interesting discussions about our plans moving forward. Nothing, as you said, is set in stone. And I have a board full of open, innovative, creative minds. So I'm sure this will give us a good foundation to begin our discussions. So I appreciate it.
I'm glad you started.
And Mike, thanks for coming. That's a long ride, I know, from experience, and I know you got to head back, so thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Be safe. Okay. Ms. Perez, let's move on with your committee.
Okay, so the Personalized Education Committee, we'll have a presentation from Sheila Hughes for the CTE plan.
I present this evening. Also, I would like to bring up you have a 2020 at a glance document, and I will quickly go over this. So CTE service 1,465 educated students from last year, with 927 students being unduplicated, meaning these particular students took at least one CTE course from last year. Among those students, we had 119 duplicated and 101 unduplicated concentrators. Amongst those concentrators, the state gave us a goal for credentials of 21.5%. CTE doubled that goal at 45.6% credentials from last year. In addition to that, our career readiness, our students earned 31 of our students had silver, 15 gold, and 6 platinum, which kind of measures our program quality. And this focuses on the workplace readiness credential. If we look over to the high left, we can focus now on our ECPPS CTE Concentrator graduation rate. And you see that our students in CTE measured 90.9% as compared to the district 75.8% and a state goal of 97.4%. Over in the left lower hand corner, our concentrator survey results. So we surveyed these students and we looked to see how we're doing and what does the students get from CTE in our program area. So the state gave a goal of 86.6 for a student participation goal, and we measured at 91.79%. Positive outcomes. So what do students say? 96.84% for CTE as compared to the state of 96.96%. Employment. Our students who graduated, are they coming out with jobs that are aligned to the pathways in which they took in high school? Well, 68.35% of our students are, as compared to the state at 64.5%. And lastly, post-secondary education. We measure 68.35% as compared to the state 75.89%. So when we pull all of this together for our CTE concentrators engaged in a positive placement, whether it was post-secondary education or whether it was advanced training, whether it was military or employment, we're greater than 95%. And so that's pretty much a summary of what was happening in CTE last year. And now I would like to focus on our local plan for next year.
Ms. Hughes, I have a question. I didn't want to get away from this part. The concentrator survey results, how do we get that information? Is this something we send out to the students? And what's the response rate usually?
Yes, ma'am. In order for a student to become a concentrator, they have a level 1 and a level 2. Your level 2 course is what constitutes that concentrator. Then those students are sent to the state. This survey is actually something that is given by the state, and the data is all interpreted.
Okay.
And we get that information back to them.
So they're sending it out like just a regular survey to the students or?
Do they send it through their classes or?
Teachers, each district is responsible for putting out that survey. So the teachers actually call every single student that's in that list. And there's a series of questions that we must ask them, and then it's embedded into a data system. And then all that information is pulled together. Later on, the state sends us those results.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about this piece?
Just for clarity, so the students enter the data or the teachers enter the data that the students give them?
The teachers enter the data that the students give them, and it is led through our career development. And that input goes.
Did you have 100% response?
No, ma'am, we had 91.79%.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Still a good number. So it's still a good number.
Because the state only required 86.
Right, it's right here.
Okay. Okay.
It's there.
And you know, I'll give credit to the teachers because they work really hard to make sure that they make contact to every student, as many students as they can. And even if a student is off to college and that number looks different, maybe that home number is in Power School, then they have conversations with the parent. But somehow we do everything and to make contact with someone that connects to that student so that we can have the data that we need. Because if not, it's the demerit against us as an LEA if we don't at least meet that percentage of students that we. Okay, so as we look at the local plan, you guys should have received the link. I know the plan is pretty large. There's just two areas that I really wanted to focus on. Page 67, we would like to increase opportunities for career advising by hiring an additional career development coordinator. And then on page 76, the large greenhouse at Northeastern Hospital Ag Complex really needs a lot of work. So we have budgeted to be able to upgrade that particular area. And that concludes my plan presentation and summary review. Unless you have any questions, if you could please take action on this.
You want us to take action tonight or move it to the consent agenda? Move it to the consent agenda. Okay.
So,
I want to ask, where are we as far as the demonstration form? How is that going?
Well, and I've had several conversations with Dr. Ingram, and as far as I know, according to the information that Dr. Ingram has given me, we have paused on that per Mr. Harris. His vision looks a little different. If this third party might want to have more conversation. But as it stands right now, the knowledge that I have received, that's per.
Yeah, we wanted to rework the MOU a little bit as it existed, and his vision is a little bit, I think it's fair to say larger. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's really a good thing. But we're still working through some of that. And, you know, we've asked Mr. Leidy to, you know, work through that MOU and make some adjustments and maybe involve FFA on a larger scale, if you would. Those are the conversations that I've had.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by larger
Maybe on more of a regional or national scale. Maybe regional is the better approach.
Like COA is using it.
COA is using it some too. Maybe a potential farmer's market. Potentially. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's kind of, where we are right now.
This affects both high schools, right?
Yes, it's not limited to one school.
I guess maybe we'll gain more understanding later. That's a big jump.
So as far as the budget, compared to last year, you said the only changes or increase would be a career development advisor. And that's in addition to the current positions you have right now. So none of the positions at the schools are changing. And then, and that position does not affect 10-month and 12-month employees. And the greenhouse at Northeastern. We have, like, some employees are 10 and some are 12, right? Okay. So all three of them?
All our ag teachers are 12? Okay. Okay.
There's a summer, there's an evaluation that takes place to qualify them to be 12 months based upon the amount that they do all year. That's, very, of course, if they don't meet amount of points that they should do.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm just confused. Aren't the managers part of the conversation? I mean, don't they sort of head that up?
What?
The farm, or whatever you want.
I'm just gonna be totally transparent. All I know is what Dr. here.
That's what I know. That's what I know.
Oh.
I think you had also, for CTE, a teaching certification or a teaching track. Is that on this chart?
Yes, ma'am, it's in the plan.
But it's not on this chart, is it? Did I miss it? It's not listed here, is it? The 24-25.
Oh, no, ma'am.
No, it's not on the chart.
Okay.
At a glance, because we didn't last year, I don't have any data on that.
Right.
We attempted to offer it last year, but we had no interest. So what we did this year is we really, really worked hard at marketing it. Between videos, Camp Square, Entitled One, and making flyers and having conversations with counselors and the students and parents. And then even we had a student interest meeting, survey, and we did end up with 30 students who were interested. And so now we're just looking to see how they qualify, because there are state qualifications that must take place. And so I'll be really excited to see what that looks like. And we are prepared to offer that course this upcoming school year, 2022-23, depending upon if we have the qualified students.
Good, thank you.
I did want to make one comment. The event that you had out at Northeastern that involved the 5th grade coming and talking to all the careers educators and also the students who were involved in the programs. I thought that was excellent. I saw a lot of excitement. Not only from the kids who are currently involved in the program, and I think that's fantastic that they were involved, but from the kids who came to the event. So I would encourage you to continue that, and try to get as many people as you can to come out and see what's going on, because oftentimes you go out and people say, well, what exactly are you doing? You know, and you have to explain, okay, we've got this and this and this. And they're like, there's this shock on their face. Really? We have all that? So I think to encourage people to come out and just observe and see what's actually going on would be very good. So I encourage you to continue that. And, you know, if you need financial help to keep it going, hey, come to the board and we'll see what we can do. Because I think it's very good.
Thank you very much. And that's one of the reason why we like second through, because we want to focus more on our fifth grade students where that awareness takes place.
Right.
And, you know, and then feed that into our middle school, that exploration piece. And so this will provide us more opportunity to broaden the awareness for our students so that they'll be better prepared. All of the development needs to take place. So thank you for looking into that.
And I think it was a good opportunity for some of the older kids to talk about what they're doing in their classes. But, you know, I would love for our community to hear some of our students talk about what they're doing, because when they start talking about the Adobe and the 3D printers and the things like that, they get super excited and, you know, firsthand from the kids and what their experiences are. And like Sharon said, there are a lot of people who just don't know what we're offering and that we do have these programs for our kids.
And that is also our plan to want to continue that awareness. What we found initially was there wasn't a lot of awareness in some of it. And so now that we've done that work, now we're working on building partnerships again. We were crippled a little bit, if you will, because of the pandemic. And we were kind of shut out of a lot of different partners and facilities, but we're able to start that again. And we had conversation with our advisory board, and they're helping us in that work. So moving forward next year, we are hoping to be able to now have some of that external awareness so that they can really see what's happening with ECPPS programs and be excited about coming and joining.
And our community should be very proud of what we offer. You know, in conversations with other districts, oftentimes I find myself saying, well, we have that and we have had it for years. And we've even had students who have gone on and become certified nurses and so on and so forth. And, you know, the more we can encourage our kids to be involved, because not all children are cut out to go to college, but we want all children to feel like they have a place in whatever they choose to do. So I think it's wonderful. And I think Elizabeth City Pasquotank is way ahead of the curve in a lot of ways if you go across the state and talk to some of these other districts. So kudos to the program.
Susan, I have one question for you. And maybe I should know the answer to this, and forgive me for not knowing. But if I'm a student at Northeastern and I am doing Adobe, but I also want to be in the drone program at PCHS, how do we work that in?
Have the cross-district opportunity wherein because we just don't have enough staff to be able to have duplicate program areas at both high schools. So with cross-districting, there may be a student over at Northeastern who chooses to take fire, or there may be a student at Pasquotank who chooses to take Adobe. These students are able to take the bus over to the sister school to still have that same opportunity, all students.
Okay, so and that's communicated.
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all right.
And that works out as far as scheduling. There's
Yes, ma'am. It does work out as far as I am concerned. I have not been alerted that it's been, that students.
been an issue. Okay.
Like, we have conversations with students, counsel,
Here comes the storm.
No applause.
Are there
No
any
applause.
other questions,
Predicting.
Ms. Hughes? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Warden, I make the motion to place FBT 02 budget amendments, FBT 03 purchasing report, and PE 01, the CTE plan on the consent agenda.
Okay.
And do we say it louder?
How about repeating it?
Okay.
Try to,
Turn your mic on.
It's on. Let me get a little closer.
There you go.
I make a motion to place FBT 02 budget amendments, FBT 03 purchasing report, and PE 01 CTE plan on the consent agenda.
Second.
okay. We've had a motion and a second. The motion was made by Ms. Pereza and the
Seconded
second
by
was
Ms. Walton.
Mr. Walton. Okay, and we need a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Virginia Houston? Yes. Pam Pereza?
Yes.
Rodney Walton?
Yes.
Daniel Spence?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. So that will be on the consent agenda for the meeting on Monday. Okay, we're going to move on to Mr. Archuleta.
Yes, we're gonna have, Ms. Reinhardt come up and talk about the school nutrition awards and achievements.
Ms. Reinhardt, you're going to have to project.
Yeah.
Chair Warden, Vice Chair Williams, board members, interim superintendent, and Dr. Ingram, thank you so much for your invitation tonight. Can you hear me? Thank you for your invitation tonight. I am as proud as I can be and just so happy to present to you the child nutrition, the school nutrition professionals of Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools. This team is absolutely a wonderful team. I'm so proud. I'm proud to be a member of this team. I want to go over just a few little things. There's so many things to brag about them on, and I can talk all night long on it. But we were recognized as a school team for our sanitation grades this year. And I started going back through the years, and many of our schools have had a 100 every single time since 2014. Most of them. The lowest grade I could find since 2014 was a 98.
Wow.
That's just unbelievable. But for 2 years, these ladies, I've been here for 2.5 years. These ladies, we've gotten 199 in the last 2 years. So I am very proud of them. That's a hard feat to do. There's not a breath. Very proud. You can rest assured to eat well in our schools. Next, I would love for Miss Crystal Turner to come up. I just want you to see her. She was, I can read it. Miss Crystal Turner is the manager of Pasquotank Elementary School, and she was the recipient of the Lynn Harvey First Time Scholarship. She was 1 out of 3 in the states.
Wow.
I'm sorry, 1 out of 5, you're right. I took them off too early. 1 out of 5 in the state to receive this award, and it was because she was deemed as not just worthy, but very deserving professional development and continued leadership. And I'm so proud of her, and I appreciate Miss Crystal for everything she said. Miss Tarika Hughes is our supervisor. Yes.
Let's see what I'm saying for words.
The microphone. Miss Tarika Hughes had to leave, but she is our supervisor. And the award that she was that she was the recipient of the Reginald Ross Inclusion Scholarship. It was only one in the state of North Carolina.
Wow.
This recipient has an all-expense paid trip to attend the National Annual School Nutrition Association meeting in Florida this year. And it was because of, they deemed her worthy of an investment for leadership, to continue her leadership development and for professional development. And I'm just so proud of all of these ladies. But there's not a one of them that doesn't deserve an award. This is my team.
Can we meet him?
One more award that we were given this year, this fall. Our ladies were the recipient of the Turn Up the Beat Award, and that was 1 and 3 for the state of North Carolina for the Gold Award for our summer nutrition program. So we're coming up on summer again, and I expect great things out of these ladies. And again, I couldn't be more proud of them. Thank you so much.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Sir.
I'm gonna have them come up. I got my back to them. So I want to apologize first and foremost, but I don't know any of them as well. So if I could bring you guys up,
Please.
thank you. Ms. Reinhardt, I mean, you can introduce them, they can introduce themselves.
This is Ms. Carol Saunders, and she is our bookkeeper for child nutrition. You met Ms. Crystal Turner. She is first-year manager at Concentrator Elementary School. This is, you're going to last name, Ms. Brittany Shell. She is our newest employee in child nutrition, and she is also at Concentrator Elementary. You know, Miss Bethany Robinson, and I, this is terrible, I draw a blank, because there's my CRSA, and who is this pretty lady? Bethany Robinson is our assistant manager at J.C. Sawyer Elementary. Miss Shirley Williams is our manager at P.W. Moore Elementary. Miss Joanne Cow is our manager at Wheatsville Elementary. Miss Dolores Brumsey is our River Road Middle School manager. Miss Donnie Bryant is our J.C. Sawyer manager. Miss Annette Dance is our assistant manager at River Road Middle School. And Miss Joyce Hooks is our assistant manager at Ecppsct Elementary School.
Thank you. And thank you for coming out tonight.
You got standing ovation.
These ladies are my heroes.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Reinhardt.
everybody.
Do I still? You're the best.
Okay, and now we're going to go on with our Policy Code Committee. Ms. Houston.
Can you hear me? I know.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay. All
You're
right.
good.
We are told each month to review our policy code for face masks. We have to take a vote every month to continue with the policy of face coverings not being required in the school settings at this time. And so I move that this be placed on the consent agenda for Monday night.
And we need a second.
Second.
And a roll call vote to place it on the consent agenda.
Williams, yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Jenny Houston,
Yes.
Pam Preston,
Yes.
Rodney Wong.
Yes.
Daniel Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
And that ends my report.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. Okay. Dr. Williams, will you take us into close, please?
Yes, I motion for the board to go into closed session as allowed by NC General Statute 143 through 318, 11A6, for the purpose of considering one or more personnel matters that are confidential under NC General Statute 115C through 320, and as allowed by NC Statute 143 through 318, 11A3, to consult with the board attorney regarding matters protected by the attorney-client privilege and to preserve that privilege.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a motion and a second to go into close. Roll call vote.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes?
George Archuleta,
Yes?
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walters.
Yes.
Daniel Smith.
Yes.
Okay, so at this time, we'll take a break